Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. We are here talking about the Beekeeper's Guide to Transformative Leadership. And I have learned so much in this series already. I'm no longer deathly afraid of bees, but I'll still keep my distance. But it's just amazing how nature can teach us so much. We as humans think we're so smart, and it turns out nature is way, way smarter than us. So welcome back, Katie and Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, talk to me a little bit about the Hive to the Boardroom. For our listeners who are in all types of roles, many HR roles, people that are running small businesses that are wearing 1,900 hats, including the HR hat. And then, of course, we have a lot of managers listening as well. How can we apply some of those, Mother Nature's beekeeping principles in business?
Yeah, this is something that we talk about a lot, Wendy, with a lot of organizations. When you think about the Hive to the Boardroom, one of the things we learned working with beekeepers is that, the hexagon is, mathematically one of the most important structures, right? Because it's designed to optimize performance of the hive. And that's why bees create their hive in a hexagon shape. Every space is used. And so, when you put all the collection of hexagons together, it also provides a lot of stability and strength for the hive, as opposed to a different shape. So bees naturally know this. And I think if we think about businesses and applying this to the boardroom, like that's exactly what we need to be thinking about organizationally is how do we create a really strong structure, right? Where we can think about the organization from the organizational level, but then welcome these individual mindsets of individuals and hire and recruit talent, right? That is going to come into the hive, work incredibly hard with their strengths, execute kind of the strategic plan for our organization, right? And not get upset or disappointed, right? If things are going awry, but taking a moment to think and seeking to understand like the why behind how we are operating. And sometimes people get really stuck, and it's up to the board, right, to think like a beekeeper and say, no, if there's something on the hive, we need to address it. We need to fix it. We need to intervene quickly. So there's not systemic issues organizationally going on. And so that has to happen quickly and swiftly. And we talked about that in some of the earlier podcasts. But yeah, Katie, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, Mike, so well said. And I think that, the place of starting to think about, how we are creating that environment is the first place to start, right? As Mike mentioned, and often one that's overlooked. Is the environment right? Right. Again, it goes back to that unlearning that we opened with is we can get stuck in, right? And we've seen this a lot in like remote work or right. Even flexibility in work post-pandemic is that we have a stigma of what we think should be. Right. And pun intended, right, of what should be. But oftentimes we're not really getting to the root of like, what is the environment that's needed, right, for this person or people to thrive, right? And how can we rethink this? And how can we look at this in new ways?
I love that. Okay, if you had all of us together said, all right, we have a new client and we need them to unthink their old mindset. Where do we start? Like, what's right? What's wrong? How do we get them to change? What if it's somebody who's stubborn like myself?
I think there's so much you can do. I mean, we talked a lot about personality assessments earlier, right? I mean, in all the successful kind of interventions, if you have somebody new, it's self-work is really required, right? It's all kind of turning the mirror on like, hey, how am I showing up and how am I thinking about myself as the problem, but coming in with that solutions focused lens of saying, okay, where do I need to stretch in different areas? Where is it more difficult for me? Oftentimes we come in, we want to lead with strengths. I mean, there's a real parallel, analogy saying, hey, let's do strength-based leadership. We want you to use your strengths to be successful, but we also need to hit the pause button and say, okay, how are we overusing these strengths? Are we not mindful of how they may be impacting others? And that mindfulness is really important as we work with and through others. And that's really what leadership's about. And that's really what, if we're thinking about the boardroom, is supposed to do. they empower the teams to execute the strategy. And if they don't trust the board, that's a big problem. And so that goes down to what Katie and I talk about a lot too, is organizational trust. And there's some real important aspects there. If trust is ever fractured or broken, it's really hard to get people to rally around. It's really hard to get people to see things differently, and they get stuck in their own ways.
Yeah, Mike, so well said. And, one of the 4 C's of trust is communication, right? And so in that place of communicating, Mike and I often ask listeners to unlearn the golden rule, right? Treat others as you want to be treated, and replace that with the platinum rule. Treat others as they want to be treated, right? And there's a place there of, as we communicate, that we're thinking about not only how we're communicating in ways that people want to be communicated to, but that reciprocally we're listening to understand instead of listening to respond. And so communication kind of comes full circle there, as we're really thinking about the opportunities, Wendy, right, to learn and unlearn and think about new ways.
Thank you for that.
Teams that embrace collaborative models inspired by natural systems, such as beekeeping, experience a 32% increase in problem-solving efficiency and adaptability to change. That's from MIT Sloan. Back to you.
It just makes sense, and when you think about it, you see it in black and white, you're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. I just wish everybody would, listen to this podcast, read your books, because you have more than one. And by the way, congratulations on being a best-selling author through Wall Street Journal, correct?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Cool. That's very, very cool. Hey, Katie, first of all, tell everybody about yourself, what you do. I know we covered this in the first episode, and how they can reach you.
Yeah, so I'm a faculty member at Moravian University in the School of Business. I also have my own consulting company, Proximal Development. The best way to reach us is through our website, leadershipfables.com. Our contact information is on there. Our book information is on there. You can order The Beekeeper, Pollinating Your Organization for Transformative Growth through the website. But we also have growth guides that are free to anyone who becomes a member of the Hive. That if you're looking to do book reads, or, ways that you could look at the level of leadership, something for you, something for, a small group, right? Or even for your organization, you could download those resources on the website.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go do that right after this. That's really cool. I really mean that. That's just like, there's been so much in this session that I'm like, well, that just makes sense. Why didn't I think about that before? And how about you, Mike? How could people reach out to you?
Yeah, same way. Katie and I have leadershipfables.com. We work together with organizations to kind of help, bring this inspiration through the Beekeeper and our newest book, The Stargazer, through keynotes and through, small group learnings and training. So whatever, if anybody wants to reach out, go to our website and they can get all those resources available to them.
I love that. Well, I'll make sure that I share your website as well on the podcast notes. Anybody has any questions whatsoever, you'll have their contact information. Other than that, we hope this information in this podcast series has been helpful. I know it has been. Thanks for joining us, and take care.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.